Hey guys, Ataman here. Today I'm breaking down the top 8 Ballon d'Or nominees. No hype, no bias, just stats. We'll calculate their ratings and see who actually performed better on the pitch. Before we dive in, I've got to give some quick credit to a few guys who just missed out. The list was already packed with 8 players, so these ones were unlucky. First up, Gianluigi Donnarumma. Honestly, one of the best Champions League performances we've seen from a keeper in years. Then there's Michael Olise. For me, the best player in Bundesliga last season. Harry Kane was brilliant too, in both Bundesliga and CL, and finally won the trophy he deserved so much. And of course, Mbappe. He had a rough start at Real Madrid, but turned it around so quickly that people forgot all about it in the same season. That tells you everything about his mentality. First, I should mention that almost all these stats we're using are measured per 90 minutes, not per game. Last season, Nuno Mendes played roughly 40 full 90s. Achraf Hakimi had 46, Vitinha 44, Pedri 51, Lamine Yamal 50, Raphinha 52, Mohamed Salah 50, and Dembele only 37. That's like 1315 minutes less than Raphinha. Let's start the calculations with ball control. You'll notice a position-specific coefficient in the formula, which can be a denominator too in other formulas, because the pressure isn't the same for every position. For example, with ball control, the further forward you play, the more forgiving the formula gets. Mendes averaged about 1.6 miscontrols per 90, out of roughly 48 total controls. Playing for such an attacking side, I dropped the fullback coefficient to 520 for him. His ball control score comes out to 83, which earns him a bronze badge. Hakimi had 1.69 miscontrols out of 57 touches. His coefficient drops even lower to 480. Since he plays so far up front, you can't even really call him a fullback. That gives him a score of 86, along with a silver badge. Vitinha is a defensive midfielder, but most PSG players had really fluid positions, so his coefficient comes in at 580. With only 1.15 miscontrols out of a crazy 71 controls per 90, he scores 91 and takes the gold badge for his exquisite touch. Pedri also hits 91, with just 1.4 miscontrols in 59. Yamal had 3.1 in 46, giving him a score of 89. Raphinha scores 91 as well. Salah had 3 miscontrols out of 31, giving him a score of 84, which honestly wasn't shocking for me. His touch isn't bad, of course, but you can tell the ball usually comes off a bit bouncy with him. And finally, Dembele takes the top spot with 92. You'll notice he's not officially a striker but a second striker, since he played as a false 9 last season. Totally unexpected, but it worked amazingly, like he was born for the role. Huge credit to Luis Enrique. Now onto ball retention. Nuno averaged 2.9 progressive carries and got dispossessed once every 90 minutes. That leaves us with 1.9, which translates to a score of 82, earning him another bronze badge. Achraf had way more offensive carries and got dispossessed even less than his teammate. He ends up with a score of 89, securing him a gold badge. Vitinha scores 79, Pedri 81. No badges for either of them. Lamine puts up a crazy 96, which wasn't unexpected. Raphinha hits 83 and Mohamed 85. Alright, here's where it gets really crazy. Usman averaged 6.8 progressive carries every 90 minutes, while only getting dispossessed 1.5 times. That means 5.3, which goes over the roof of our scale. Scoring 99 by a guy who played most of his games as a false 9 is just out of this world. Carrying the ball through the middle, surrounded by defenders, is way tougher than doing it out wide as a winger. Time for dribbling. Mendes completed 1.6 take-ons per 90, which gives him an 81 on the scale. His success rate was just under 60 at 58, so luckily it doesn't drag his score down. But unfortunately he still came up 1 point short of earning a dribbling badge. Hakimi managed 1.2 dribbles per 90, but with a really low success rate of 45%. That dragged his score down from 77 to 74. Vitinha and Pedri, despite their great success rates, didn't get many dribbles, which was a bit unexpected, and both ended up with a 79 dribbling score. Yamal, the one we've been waiting for, despite a low success rate of 51%, completed 5 dribbles every 90 minutes, which is amazing, the most of anyone last season. Honestly, if Doku hadn't been injured and played more, no one would have stood a chance against him in dribbling. The guy's like Flash. Raphinha scores surprisingly low, just 78. Salah, not surprisingly at all, scores 75. He was never, I repeat, never a dribbler. It's crazy what the media can make you believe. His score in FC26 for a 33-year-old Salah is 90. Absolutely ridiculous. I have no problem with Salah. He's just a big example. It's the same for most players. Just check out Hakimi, Vitinha, Pedri, and Raphinha's scores in FC26. Same story every time. Now, here's another exciting one, but this time he lets us down, scoring just 83. Looks like all those injuries have taken their toll on Dembele. He's not the same crazy dribbler he used to be, but there's nothing to feel sorry about. He doesn't dribble much anymore, but he's the best ball carrier, a top goal scorer, and the main nominee for the Ballon d'Or. Not too bad. There aren't any stats to measure agility and balance, so the responsibility of scoring them falls on me. Here are the agility and balance scores. I base them on the player's age, height, and weight, and for agility I also consider their pace. Obviously, shorter players are usually more agile and have better balance, thanks to shorter legs and the lower center of gravity. I compare each player to lots of others and their scores, to be as fair as possible. Now we take the average of all 5 scores to determine their dominance category score. You'll notice that every attribute has a specific importance coefficient for each position, because not every skill matters the same for every role. The higher the number, the more that skill affects the final rating for that position. Alright, it's passing category's turn. For short passing, it's not just precision we care about. How often those passes actually help your team progress matters too, of course. Nuno Mendes scores an unexpected 90 with 92% precision and 6.5 progressive passes. Hakimi with 7.4 scores 92. Insane numbers for the two fullbacks, earning them both gold badges. Now for the ones we have high expectations for. Vitinha's precision is unbelievable, 96% for a midfielder, and he's made 8.5 progressive passes per 90. I lowered his denominator since he played as a CM2, which gives him a score of 93. But Pedri, a jaw-dropping 10.7 progressive passes with 94% precision. He scores 97. The guy's a true heir to the likes of Xavi and Iniesta. Yamal, Raphinha and Salah score 88, 87 and 86. Only Yamal grabs a gold badge. The other two take silver. And Dembele, 7 progressive passes with 85% precision. Scores 92. He's done his hybrid job perfectly, providing and finishing at the same time as a false 9. In long passing, Nuno completed 5.3 long passes with 66% precision. I did not see that coming at all. He scores 88. When did this guy become such a great long passer? Hakimi scores 77. Vitinha. My god, Vitinha. He scores 96. The dude completed 10.5 long passes with 85% precision. I'm speechless. Wow. Pedri scores 90. Yamal 61. Don't be shocked. His crossing is great, not his long passes. Raphinha scores 82. He's a solid long passer, especially for a winger. And Salah gets 74. But here's another shocker. Dembele with 3.4 completed long passes and an impressive 68% precision scores 87. Didn't see that coming either. The guy has completely transformed under Enrique. Someone else entirely. Now we arrive at through balls, my favorite. They're a huge sign of football intelligence and vision. Those perfectly timed, perfectly weighted passes that pierce the defensive line. We all know them as De Bruyne passes. To score it, we simply run the number through a scale. Here are the results. Dembele once again shows what an outstanding false nine he is, creating an incredible number of through balls for his wingers. Salah, who hasn't had much to show until now, scores 86, which is insanely hard to achieve in through balls. Pulling them off isn't for everyone. That's why we hand out gold badges for scores above 86 here. Pedri's score is amazing, but not really a surprise. With Vitinha, we all expected a bit more, though 82 is still a solid score in through balls. I expected more from Raphinha, and especially Hakimi, who only managed 66. But Yamal, the kid played at a Kevin De Bruyne level last season. He drops a jaw-dropping 95, averaging one through ball every 90 minutes. When calculating vision, we use key passes and progressive passes per 90, plus the through balls score. But I also subtract half of completed crosses, because crossing doesn't really demand much vision. A lot of wide players rack up inflated key pass numbers, since successful crosses count as key passes, which can be misleading. This adjustment makes sure we're rewarding real vision. Here are the vision scores. Hakimi puts up an unexpected 87 with 2.17 key passes per 90, higher than Vitinha's disappointing 1.7, which only gets him 84. Raphinha was outstanding too, with almost 2.9 key passes, landing him an 89. But then comes Dembele with yet another stunner, almost 3.2 key passes every 90 minutes, earning him an unbelievable 94 for vision last season. But let me remind you, these are stats from just one season. In other seasons, some of these numbers would be lower, especially in the case of Dembele, who's only really had this one outstanding season in his whole career. His only other good season was like 8 or 9 years ago at Dortmund. It's time for crossing. We calculate it using completed crosses and their precision. Here are the scores. You'd usually expect the flank players to be the best of the lot, especially fullbacks and wingbacks. I knew Raphinha was going to be the best crosser among them, and he was, scoring 85. Hakimi didn't quite meet the expectations. Dembele was absolutely awful. And Salah, he was the real stunner here. Last season, he massively overperformed. Normally, he isn't that good at crossing. Anyway, if you're wondering about the badges, crossing and set-piece taking share one, which goes to the higher one. Here are the set-piece taking scores. I determined them by looking at crossing and all set-piece attempts, including corners. Mendes, Yamal and Salah earned bronze badges, not because of their set-piece taking scores, but their crossing. and Raphinha ends up with gold because of his 88 score for set piece taking. Here are the curler scores, which I determined myself. Yamal, with those amazing R2s, totally convinced me to give him a gold. Alright, now let's look at the category averages. By the way, like the video if you found it any good. Let's start the shooting category with offensive positioning, where we use progressive passes received and non-penalty XG. Two interesting points here. Achraf Hakimi, he averaged 11 progressive passes received per 90. This is exactly what I mean when I say you can't really call him a fullback. That number just shouldn't be possible for someone in that position. The other one is Dembele's non-penalty XG as a false 9. 0.75. Absolutely insane, boosting his score up to 97. I also went a little hard with the badges, which is why Yamal didn't get gold even with an 88. Now finishing, I use goals per 90 and non-penalty goals minus non-penalty expected goals per 90. Each with a specific coefficient for every position. Then the result goes through a scale, as usual. Mendes 78, an amazing finishing score for a fullback, earning him a bronze badge. But Achraf Hakimi hits again with another stunner, completely overshadowing Mendes. Vitinha's finishing is unexpectedly great too. Yamal's low score was totally predictable, at least for me. He's the only one in the group without a positive non-penalty goals minus non-penalty expected goals. Dembele takes the top spot with an unbelievable 95, above Raphinha at 93. That 2-point gap comes down to Dembele's goals per 90 being much higher. Like I said at the start of the video, he played far fewer games than Raphinha. To give long shots a reliable score, we'll look at goals scored from outside the box, especially the really long range ones, roughly over 30 yards or 27 meters. We always include these long distance goals, no matter which season we're rating. Mendes hasn't scored a single goal from outside the box in his career, so I had to give him a score below 55. Hakimi has 4 goals from outside the box for PSG, with only one last season. I went with the more reliable measure his whole career, which gives him 79 as his long shots score. Vitinha has scored 2 long distance goals for Porto and Wolverhampton, and 9 outside the box goals for PSG, 2 of them last season. He deservedly gets 87 and takes a gold badge. We go easy on long shots badges, because it's a tough attribute. Pedri scores 76, whether you consider just last season or his whole career at Barca. Lamine has 9 outside the box goals in his career, 7 of them last season. His career score would be 84, last season 87. I went with neither and gave him 86, because he deserves the golden badge. Raphinha has scored a long-distance goal for Vitória Guimarães, and his numbers were slightly better last season than his totals for Leeds and Barca, so we go with last season, giving him 84 and the silver badge. Salah had just one of his 14 outside-the-box goals for Liverpool last season. Including that and the long-distance one he scored for Roma, he gets 78. Dembele scored only 1 for PSG from outside the box and 2 for Barcelona. His score is 72. Now shot power, which I determined myself. Don't think I just give scores off the top of my head for the attributes without stats. It's way harder than using formulas and scales because I want to be as fair as possible. I take my time watching highlights and comparing the player to a database of others. Attempting to shoot is scored by running the number of shots per 90 through a scale. Here are volleys scored by me again. Okay, back at it. To score heading accuracy, we sometimes need the aerial duels score too. So let's score that first. We look at aerial duels 1 per 90 and the win percentage. One important thing about scoring defensive attributes, interceptions, tackling, blocking, and aerial duels, is that we boost their scores up to 3 points depending on their team's quality. In the case of all 8 players here, that's a full +3 boost, since they all come from dominant teams and don't face defensive situations much during the season. So here are the aerial duels scores. Mendes was far better than anyone else. All the other 7 ended up with brown badges because of their weaker presence in the air. Now, to score heading accuracy itself, we use headed goals per 90 multiplied by a position-specific coefficient as usual, and run it through a scale also as usual. At the end, we add a height-based boost too. Initial heading accuracy score of Mendes with 0 headed goals in his career, plus that 1 point height boost is 41, but his solid aerial duels score bumps it up to 60. The same happens with Hakimi, with 2, Vitinha with none, Pedri with 1, and Yamal with none headed goals in their careers. The height boosts for Vitinha and Pedri were 3 points each. Raphinha has scored 7 headed goals in his Barcelona career, which gives him 83 on the scale, 85 with the height boost. His low aerial duels score doesn't help him here. If you think that's too high, just remember his headed goal in last season's El Clasico. It says it all about his heading quality. It's just his height that keeps his numbers from being much better. Salah and Dembele ended up with higher scores for heading accuracy than for aerial duels too. To score direct free kicks, we use the number of direct free kick goals and the conversion rate. For players like Mendes, Pedri, Yamal, and Salah who haven't scored free kicks in their careers, I use a formula that combines their curl, finishing, and long shots scores to determine their direct free kick rating. And for players like Hakimi, Vitinha, and Dembele who have scored free kick goals in fewer than 60 attempts, the sample size isn't reliable, so I determine their scores guided by the formula and scale. Raphinha is the only one with more than 60 attempts between Leeds and Barca, and with 2 goals scored for Leeds, his formula score comes out to 76. You might argue that Hakimi and Vitinha's scores should be lower than Raphinha's, but I believe that with the same number of attempts, they would likely score more. After all, 2 out of 62 isn't particularly impressive. These are the penalties scores. With fewer than 15 attempts, the numbers aren't reliable, so Salah is the only one we can rate directly from his success rate. He's scored 45 out of 53, which gives him 85%. For the rest, I use their penalty success rate or finishing score as a reference. Alright, let's check out the shooting category averages. In defense, we've already covered aerial duels. Before we move on to defensive positioning, where there aren't any direct stats, it's better to first calculate the interceptions, tackling, and blocking scores. That way, we'll have a clearer picture of their defensive awareness. helping us assign more reliable positioning scores. The three attributes share the same scale, no formulas here. We just run the number of interceptions, tackles, and blocks through the scale to get their score. And don't forget, just like with aerial duels, we add that 3-point boost here too, since these guys play for dominant teams and don't have to defend as much. Pretty interesting results. Mendes lived up to expectations, and Hakimi, he's actually not far off his teammate defensively at all. Vitinha's numbers as a defensive midfielder don't really stand out, but that's no surprise, he's a regista, not your classic destroyer type. But Pedri really blew me away. His tackling is actually better than Mendes. Hard to believe that baby-faced lad, who isn't even a defensive midfielder, is this good defensively. The other two Barca wingers show the same sense of defensive responsibility. And I'll keep saying this. I respect players who don't leave the dirty work to others just to chase goals. With Salah and Dembele, you see the other end of the spectrum. I don't like seeing this at all. But of course you can make an exception for players like them, because they give you so much in the final third. By the way, we've all known Salah. Not much was expected of him defensively. But wasn't that Dembele hunting like a hound at the head of PSG's pressing line against Inter in the UCL final? Seems like it was just the story of a few big games, with far fewer minutes than others and less defending in the easier matches. He had plenty of energy saved for the big moments, fooling us all. Okay, now let's check out the defensive positioning scores. For aggression, we look at the percentage of dribblers tackled, fouls, and of course yellow and red cards. There are two really interesting scores here. Pedri, with 87 for tackling, unbelievably ends up with 67 for aggression, taking a brown badge. That baby face shows itself here. He made all those tackles while committing just 0.27 fouls per 90 minutes. Such a master at work. And interestingly, we have the total opposite with Dembele. He didn't defend much, but got sent off twice last season. So that's where the hound kicks in. Being an offensive player, he earns a gold badge at 83. It's time to take a look at the defense category averages. It's the physicality category's turn. We run the average distance covered per 90 through this scale, and these are the scores. We used their distance covered in last season's Champions League. You might think there's something wrong with the scale, since the scores look too low, but Joshua Kimmich covered 12.8 kilometers per 90 last season in the Champions League, equaling 94. I also boosted Mendes, Yamal and Raphinha's scores by 5 points. All three deserved it for their great defensive performance. Yamal is actually a case study. How's he this good defensively without covering much ground? Here are the strength and jumping scores. I determined them by factoring in the player's age, weight, height, and aerial duels. Okay, let's take a look at the physicality averages. It's pace time. For sprint speed, we run the player's top speed in kilometers per hour through this scale. Then we determine acceleration in relation to the sprint score, factoring in the player's age, height, and weight. Sprint speed and acceleration share one badge under the pace category. Achraf Hakimi's pace is devastating. He clocked 36.9 kilometers per hour in last season's CL. Absolutely exceptional. Salah isn't that young anymore, and you can see the impact of injuries on Dembele here too. Everyone's record is from last season's Champions League, except Yamal. He had a really low record, so I used his Euro 2024 stats. Without that, he wouldn't have even reached 79, which is a pretty low pace for such a young winger. Although honestly, he doesn't really seem to need it. At least, it hasn't affected his dribbling. Next up, it's weak foot and skill moves. Dembele is the only one with a 5-star weak foot, and Yamal is the only one with a 5-star skill moves. And here come the category averages. Now it's the presence category. For injury resistance, we take the games missed due to injury, divide by the number of 90s played, and run that through this scale. The lowest score, of course, goes to Dembele at 61. He's played 234 90s for Dortmund, Barcelona, and PSG, but has missed 153 games across his time at these clubs. I gave a 5-point boost to Mendes, Pedri, and Dembele, the three with the most injuries, for their outstanding season. Inconsistency except for Salah, who's been at the top level for like a decade and totally deserves a gold badge after this amazing season. All the other 7 get 4 stars and silver badges. If this weren't just a one-season rating, probably all of them would have lost half a star in consistency. And finally, the averages for the last category. Before moving on to the overall ratings, let's check out how many badges these guys earned. The overall pitch performance rating is calculated just like the category scores. This time, the average of all 36 attributes. Now the moment we've all been waiting for. Nuno Mendes' overall pitch performance rating is 78.4. That's a world-class score, but not quite enough to put him in Ballon d'Or contention. Still, he's only just getting started. At his age, he can only get better. And he's already shutting down some of the best wingers in the world. Achraf Hakimi's overall rating is jaw-dropping. 81.6. That's elite. I couldn't believe it at first either. But just look at his numbers. Ball retention, short passing, vision, offensive positioning, finishing. On top of all those offensive weapons, he's defensively great too. At blistering pace, consistency, and rock-solid injury resistance, and you've got a fullback package that's almost complete. Vitinha's rating is 78.9, world class, but a bit below what we might have expected. His long passing, absolutely out of this world, perfect for a regista. Great long shots, stamina, and consistency. He hardly ever gets injured, but his not so high vision and relatively weak defensive presence as a defensive midfielder takes a big bite out of his score. Pedri scores 79.1, world class. His dominance and passing are stellar, defensively solid, tireless, two-footed, and consistent. The weaknesses, his shooting and strength, plus the injury issues he's had. As a package, he might not hit elite, but he delivers almost everything you'd expect from a top midfielder. Lamine Yamal's overall is 79.4, world class. The quality at just 17, astounding. His dominance and passing are insane, and at 95 in through balls is just unreal. Defensively responsible, consistent, simply amazing. But his weaker finishing, physicality, and relatively low pace as a winger take their toll, keeping him just shy of an elite rating. Raphinha. You're not gonna believe it, but it's the way it is. 82.7. He's got dominance, vision, and he's a great passer, finisher, long shooter, header, and penalty taker. Defensively active, fast, consistent, and hardly ever injured. He might not have many elite level scores, but the secret to his insane overall is that unlike others, he has no standout weaknesses. Truly an incredible package. Mohamed Salah ends up with just 79.2. He's without a doubt a great world-class player, but also overrated. And to be fair, overrated for a good reason. His goals and assists back it up. But that overratedness really shows in the finals he's played for Liverpool. 13 finals, just 2 assists and 2 goals, both from the penalty spot. Dembele's pitch performance, the main Ballon d'Or contender, is 80.7. His ball retention, through balls, vision, offensive positioning and finishing are truly impressive. But even with those, he doesn't make it into the top 2 of this group because of some glaring weaknesses. Still, let's not downplay it. 80.7 is an elite score, which is a big deal. Many believe Raphinha was the best player last season, but who would have thought it would be Hakimi taking second spot ahead of Dembele? These 3 were literally a class apart from the other 5. Of course, there are other elite players out there, but these were the standout performers of the year. Raphinha is Pitch Performance's 2024-25 Player of the Season. If trophies weren't considered for the Ballon d'Or, my vote would go to him. But with the Champions League factored in, I'd rather see Hakimi win it. Still, being a fullback doesn't help his case. And as the predictions suggest, it'll probably go to Dembele. I've also rated Prime Ronaldo and Messi in the first video of the channel. And if you've got questions about the algorithm, or want to dive deeper into pitch performance, check out the intro video.